Chapter 9. Getting back in the groove back home and getting ready to start again with the Gorgeous George show, word was brought to my attention by Matt's dad that Matt got locked up for something at Overhill Lake Park. It was brought to my attention that Matt moved in with his mother away from Virginia until his court date. Matt was charged with sodomizing three young underage girls at the park. No idea on how true it was, but he admitted to the crimes, but little did I know thinking he wasn't guilty and couldn't be. I defended him throughout that ordeal. After his trial, he was sentenced to 23 years in prison, with most of that time dropped with 5 years over his head to be served. It was a sad situation, but he put himself in that predicament by messing with underage children and became a sex offender. Still to this day, I don't know what actually happened, but feel like he had a bad addiction and hanging around Ryan didn't help. I told Matt several times hanging around that trash was going to get himself in a predicament, and it was so true. Meanwhile, we started doing some Gorgeous George shows, and we had a 6 week block of shows. The public access channel went through a different turnaround because there were several creators who wanted to do a show at the station. So, from doing shows every week to doing only 6 shows all year. That put a damper on things while Kevin, Vince, and myself planned them out. Jim Redacted, who was doing my boards, also was doing the creative editing of my shows. Songs that I would sing at the Caroline, and he did the editing, splashing Sue's face and I together with various photos from the first initial trip to Vegas until present. Style Weekly did the first write up about me calling me the Howard Stern of Richmond. Back in 1999, when Howard Stern was on commercial based television and was forced to be taken off a local radio station from airing him, a local supermarket chain called Crops was on the kick, trying to remove him out the market, which caused local radio station to change its format. 106.5 FM, then go off the air. I was on a campaign to try to get the Howard Stern show back on the local market, but to no avail. We had close to 1,000 signatures to save the radio station and keep Stern on in this market. This was years before he finally went on satellite radio with his show. I showed through my show the kind of material that we had similar in doing my own rendition of Howard Stern's Fartman. Kevin and I had the article made of the show written by a writer that worked for Style Weekly and it showcased our talents. Later that same year, in one of the segments, we would follow a race reality show. Show. I had a big problem in following this show due to the nature of what they were. Usually there would be a 15-minute prep time where the cast and crew of my show would get prepped up, making sure the volume and mics were working. They purposely try to stay on longer with their show, which I was hearing none of. I told them, we have our show going on, and they need to hurry up. They didn't listen, so I said, again, they needed to leave. They had said something to Kevin while he was trying to get up for our show. Finally, I was ready to get on camera and cause a scene. Their head guy told me that their show wasn't finished. I said it was because there's a certain time when our show comes on following his, and if he does his racist show, he needs to be aware of the freaking time limit of it. Jim Redacted, my technical producer, stepped in between me and this guy knowing there was going to be a physical fight about Ready to Brew. After they left the studio, it was brought to the programming manager of the public access station attention and was corrected by giving an extra 30 mins between the airing between their show and our show. Definitely made it plain that their actions weren't appreciative, and I was going to forcibly move them out of the station myself if it happened again. So again, this is why there was a 30-minute difference of the ending of their show and the beginning of my show starting. Jim Redacted was in place to handle the filming of the show and the producing of a part where I played an old man named Henry was interviewing Michael Jackson. That editing credit goes to Jim, and he had that knack for doing our logos and intros, such as the Music Box Dancer intro and the Dolly Parton intro to my shows. All the works of Jim Redacted. Even though I had several differences with some of Jim's opinions, I would tell Jim, I'm not paying you for your opinion or to think I'm paying you for your work to do what I'm asking you to do. So even though I had some issues with Jim on these matters, usually the end result of what he produced for me was usually gold. Kevin, Vince, and myself would shoot more episodes at Caroline, a park where it was done outdoors. Most memorable show was the Beaver Hunt, where Old Man Henry, Bob Dole, and Colonel Powell were looking for beaver, and we used the wig as the beaver, and we would have toy guns shooting down the flying beaver in the air. LOL. Throughout doing shows on the public access channel, there was a lady singer by the name of Wendy Pace that would sing and perform on other shows. Paul Redacted was the producer of that particular show called Rockets. I called in the show and told Wendy that she had an open invitation to perform on my show. So Wendy and I spoke on the phone at the station and then offline and spoke. So she performed outdoors at the Caroline on her first appearance on my show. Jim Redacted did the camera work, and Kevin and I did our parody of Fantasy Island, where Kevin was Tattoo and I was Ricardo Montalban's character, Mr. Rourke. On part of the skit, we had Rush Limbaugh wanted a fantasy by visiting Fantasy Island and me playing him using the mask, saying, "I want a rock and roll singer," and then pop up Wendy on a still camera screen. Wendy had an actual song that was being played on air at one of the local radio stations, trying to give her exposure we did, and hence was one of her first shows she appeared on. Meanwhile, Sue called me and begged me to come back to Vegas. I told her I'm not playing games with her and asked her how she got out of jail. She made reference that some of her friends raised the money and got her out. I said, I'm going to be played. And she said she would make it up to me if I come down. So Lisa and I began talking again, and I asked her if she wanted to come back with me to Vegas. She and I started speaking again, but she was having problems with Ryan calling her, not getting over the fact they weren't a couple. She was about ready to put a restraining order on Ryan. I made mention about what happened to Matt, and Lisa wasn't in the least bit surprised. Lisa hated Matt, and I couldn't really blame her for how she felt, even though I felt bad for Matt not knowing the whole story or why he would admit to something he didn't do. Meanwhile, back home, my father's health was getting worse. Going on the better half of 6 years, my father was going through more radiation treatment and chemotherapy. Things are kept secret, and I didn't know or realize what was going on solely with my father. My father had to go back at least every week just about because he was peeing blood and had a catheter stuck to his privates. He would have to go every week to get the blood discolorized out of his urine. It was now around September in 2001, so I told my stepmother to keep getting information on his condition and I would be heading back to Vegas. This made my fourth time heading back to Vegas while Lisa was going to fly a week later. Back in Vegas, getting settled, staying at Luxor Hotel and Casino. I was there doing my usual gambling and not really thinking much about Sue right away. Told myself I was going to enjoy myself before I get myself worked up about her. It was the morning of September 11th and my phone was ringing off the hook. I didn't answer the calls because I was just getting up. I turned the television on and saw a plane flying into the World Trade Center in New York, and I said to myself, oh my fucking God. What is going on here? While the news reporter announced on CNN that two planes flew into the World Trade Center, one flying into one with a big black smoke while one of the buildings disintegrated right in front of my eyes, and then showing the other plane hitting the other trade center while that building disintegrated with a black smoke as well. I knew right there we were under attack by terrorists. I called Lisa and she said, yeah, she knew. And said, planes aren't flying for what she heard. And I said to myself, it was a good thing I drove this time. I called my stepmother and I asked if Dad was all right and if he knew what happened. She said they were watching it on television. Then inquired about his health and she said it seemed about the same. Our country was under attack, and it was known as 911 since it happened in the 9th month and the 11th day. They showed Bush Jr. reading to a kindergarten classroom when he was informed about the Twin Towers being attacked. Then later hearing about two more planes flown with people on them, while the two hit the World Trade Center had no one flying them. News broke out everywhere, and Las Vegas was a ghost town, not knowing if even the casinos would be open. MLB baseball shut down its operation for a week, and the NFL also didn't play for a week. So I could gamble on sports for a week. Las Vegas was a ghost town, and nobody could fly anywhere, meaning Lisa had to cancel her flight. My mind really wasn't on Sue, but about the current situation and the attack the nation was under. I finally tried to call Sue to let her know I was in town, but no answer. I then called LaDonna, and her phone was disconnected. So I had called the private investigator for him to tell me if there was any news and how Sue originally get out of jail back in April. From what the report said, it showed she was bailed out, but didn't give the particulars. After 2 weeks, planes could fly again, and Lisa then came down while I picked her up at the airport in Las Vegas. Supposedly, Lisa had a friend she met last time, so she insisted after we grabbed dinner that her friend was going to pick her up at the casino. So I told her the current situation, so it was more of the same. Finally got a hold of Sue, and she was over at her place with that crazy roommate. I called her and got her, and she told me she will call me back. She was in the middle of something. My mind was in every direction at this point because I was concerned about the situation, and I was also concerned thinking about my father's condition. Still dealing with the drama of post 911, not knowing if there would be sequence of eventually more attacks. I made a call to my mother in Tennessee to inquire if she was all right. We spoke, and I told her I was in Vegas, and on the way back I would drop in and visit. Far as Sue was concerned, day passed, still no call. I drove by there to her place, and there was no answer at the door. Still no call back neither. I was getting pissed, believing she was playing one of her games again. Got a hold of Lisa, and we had dinner. Lisa wanted to come at me for not paying her dinners on the last trip and told me that was part of the original agreement. I was taken back by that, reminding her that I, in fact, paid for her dinners down there, and I didn't pay for all of them when I found out she had money. Since this time she is spending more time with her friend she met out in Vegas, I really shouldn't have to pay for anything if she is not fulfilling her agreement and helping me out with Sue. So arguments started up, and more issues came about while I was getting extremely pissed off with her, and then with Sue not being able to know why she still hasn't got back with me. Lisa took off and scuffled, and I was getting to a point of not knowing who to trust. Then I went to LaDonna's house to see if Sue was there, and supposedly LaDonna answered the door and told me she was there, but left for a while with some Indian dude. I was perplexed, not knowing who in the hell that was. Supposedly it was drug contact, and she was ignoring me, and on this fourth trip I never got to see her at all. So I finally said screw it after a few more weeks, and since I didn't know where Sue was, and Lisa was shacked up with some guy down there, I came back